This is Darren Carell. In this video, I'll discuss the why and how of getting data from the PCA pump. In a companion video, we'll go over what to do once the information is obtained. I imagine the title of this talk makes many of you ask a query. What queries can be answered by querying the pump? Maybe not in so many words. Likely more along the lines of, why should I bother knowing how to get information from the PCA? In order to realize what can be done with the information obtainable from the PCA, one first needs to know what the information is. The pump stores three specific pieces of information: total amount of opioid received, number of patient demands, and number of actual delivered doses, and allows it to be viewed in time periods of the prior 1, 2, 4, 8, 12, and 24 hours. While some of this information is also documented in the electronic medical record, without spending time with the details, suffice it to say that because of the way this information is obtained, what is there is not always complete. Plus, being able to see the specific breakdown by all the time periods isn't possible in the EMR. So it's always best to go to the source of the data, the PCA machine, and get the information you need for yourself. With the information available from the pump, the management decisions that can be addressed are: is the patient using the PCA effectively? And what can be done based on the answer? Do changes need to be made to the PCA? And if so, what? And what dose of opioids should be used to make the conversion to enteral opioids when it's time to switch? Now that we know what the available information is and have a sense of the questions that often need answering, we'll next go over how to actually get all the critical information from the pump. This is the PCA module attached to the infusion pump brain. This is just one of a number of types of PCA pumps that exist in the world, and obviously the one used at Brigham and Women's. If you're from outside the Brigham and you have a different pump, you'll need to check with your local experts to determine what information you can get and how. First step is to focus on the PCA module for a second. The only thing that needs to be done on the module itself is to select the channel by pushing the button located here. Then you turn your attention to the infusion pump brain, where everything else you need to do happens. If you'll notice, the screen has changed and now displays information about the PCA settings. At the top is the specific agent and the template the order came from. In this case, the opioid hydromorphone was ordered using the general template. The PCA is set with a 0.4 milligram patient bolus dose, a 6-minute lockout interval. Since there is no continuous infusion in this example, nothing is listed, but it would appear in the empty space here. And finally, based on the above parameters, the hourly limit is correctly set at 4 milligrams per hour. Next, you want to push the Options button here. Then push the button next to Patient History here. The screen defaults to what is called shift totals and for the 8-hour time period. However, if you look here, you see that in fact what is being shown is only for a 2-hour time period. That's because the pump was cleared at 7:54, 7:55 in this case, and because we're in the shift totals mode, this cleared time is the time zero for everything shown. And since it was 9:57 when this photo was taken, that's the end time. Now, cleared is a bit of a misnomer. What it actually represents is when the nurse last obtained the information from the pump to enter into the EMR. Once the data is recorded, the pump gets, quote, cleared, which resets the starting time for the shift totals mode. So if you're looking at the 8-hour time period, depending on when you're looking in relation to the last nursing clear, the data can be for any amount of time up to 8 hours. And if you were looking in the 4-hour time period, it could be for any amount of time up to 4 hours, and so on for the other available time periods. The reason cleared is a misnomer is because the data prior to the clear isn't actually lost. The only way to get rid of the data from the pump is to shut it down and then restart it and select new patient. This appropriately wipes the data from the prior patient. To get all the data before the last clear, you need to get into the 24-hour totals mode by pushing the button next to 24H totals here. The screen now shows that it is in 24 hours total mode and at the 8-hour time period. Looking at the top now shows that the data being displayed is for the actual prior 8 hours. So, this patient used 9 milligrams of hydromorphone in the last 8 hours, pushed the PCA button 44 times, and actually received a dose 20 times. Thus, 24 pushes were during a lockout period. If you're really paying attention, you'll have noticed that 20 deliveries of 0.4 milligrams per dose is only 8 milligrams, yet the total amount received says 9 milligrams. So what gives? Remember, patients can get nursing rescue doses too. This patient was ordered to get 0.5 milligram per rescue dose, and so had to have received 2 doses in the last 8 hours to make up for the missing 1 milligram. The next thing to note is the instruction here near the bottom. In order to move to the other available time periods, you push the button below the word zoom here. Every time you push the button, it moves the cursor over 1 from left to right, like you read. So if you're at 8, you next move to 4, push again to get to 2, push again to 1, and push once more, and you wrap around to 24. If you wanted to go to 12, you'd push zoom one more time, and then once more again would bring you back to 8. Here on the 24-hour time period screen, we check the top and see that in fact this is an entire 24-hour period. If the PCA were running for less than 24 hours, the start time would be whenever it was initiated, and you'd have to do the math to figure out the time period the data is for. Obviously, zooming to a time period that is within the length of time the PCA has been running gives accurate data for the stated time period. For example, if the PCA had only been started at 1800 the day prior, this screen would note this as the start time at the top, and the data would actually be for only a 16-hour period despite being in the 24-hour time period screen. However, if we zoomed to the 12-hour time period screen, which is less than the 16 hours the PCA had been running, the data would be for the actual prior 12 hours. Okay, back to our example here. We see the patient used 26 milligrams in the last 24 hours. Push the button 142 times, but only 59 of these were delivered, the rest being in a lockout period. As just stated, over the last 24 hours, the patient received 26 milligrams. And if you recall from the 8-hour time period screen, they used 9 milligrams in the prior 8 hours. If you extrapolate this 8-hour use pattern to an entire 24 hours by multiplying the amount by 3, the number of 8-hour time periods in 24, you see the patient used the equivalent of 27 milligrams in a theoretic 24-hour time period, which is basically what they used in reality over that time. Thus, the patient has had quite consistent use of the opioid over the last 24 hours. After you're done extracting all the data you need from the pump, you need to exit from the patient history screen by pushing the button under the word exit here, and then you need to push the button under the word start here, in order for the pump to be able to be used by the patient again. Because even though it's not noticeable in any way, the pump automatically pauses operation while you're in the patient history screens. I hope you learned something from this talk. Now that you have all the information, you can address the management decisions that arise in patients on PCA. Please watch the PCA Pump Queried Now What video found in the Inpatient Acute Pain Management section of the website where this is discussed. And as always, thanks for watching.